Night, everyone. This is update for May 4, 2022, day 70 of the war, end of the date update. So as always, we're going to start with strategic update and strategic overview of the situation, and then we're going to do frontline walkthrough. So the first item is that Russian side started attacking finally bridges over Dnipro River. So specifically today, they targeted bridge in the city called Dnipro, which is as well on the river Dnipro. So allegedly they destroyed that one bridge. This is, we believe, only the start of these attacks, and they're driven by the need to prevent Western weapons arriving on the Eastern Front here. So, so essentially, at this point, Ukrainian railroad infrastructure and general transportation infrastructure is severely damaged, specifically railroad more so. We also there are severe shortages of fuel, where we see that most of the fuel is diverted towards military use, and there is almost nothing for sort of civilian and economic life, which again destroys the economy even more, and that makes Ukraine totally dependent on foreign financial aid, and it's already dependent on the military financial aid from the West. So we're also seeing initial signs of developing shortages of simple household items, and that's driven mostly by the shortages of the fuel, not the shortage of the actual items, but this is a result of the destroyed logistical infrastructure. At this point, Ukraine is fully relying on the road transportation, and railroads are totally being used only for essential, mostly used for military purposes. And we believe that Russia will continue its attacks on the bridges, which will make things even worse in Ukraine. The most dangerous situation is actually that some of these bridges are on the dams, and as you can see, there are several artificial lakes. So one is north of Kiev, then there's this one called Kaniv Lake, then there's a Krimchuk or Cherkasy Lake, then there's another one here, and then there's one more here. So all of them, at the end of them, they're all artificial for hydropower generation. And they have dams, and on the top of the dam there is basically a bridge. So there might be a point when Russia will destroy all of their sort of regular bridges, and those sort of bridges over the dams will be used as the only option to bring sort of everything to the eastern bank of Dnipro River, and there's significant chance that Russia may attack those dams, and there will be huge potential damage, obviously, from the water that will be released, and potential human lives. So that's this is obviously not immediate threat, but this is something that we need to keep in mind as things develop over time. Then I also did some research. We spoke about the support in Russia, like popular support for the war, and then popular support for the war in Ukraine. And there was a lot of sort of pushback from the viewers saying that that popular support is elusive. So I did some research to look back in the Russian history, and there is I find some validity to that pushback. So if we look there, I'm gonna look at two precedents. One is 1905, when Russia declared war on Japan, Russian Empire, and the purpose was just the the internal situation in Russia was very difficult, and so the Russian emperor decided to divert all of that negative sort of societal power towards the war, and kind of like consolidate its power, and basically kind of like a release valve for the problems inside of the country. And the idea was that it's very easy to to defeat Japan. That war ended up being a Japanese victory, and it led to essentially small-scale revolution in the country, in the Russian Empire, that was only stopped by the Russian Emperor, who conceded some power and agreed to create a parliament in the country called Duma. So, so as you can see, that it tends to be a situation when it's like was almost on the edge when the Russian emperor lost power in that situation, even though initially there was sort of support for that war and all that stuff, popular support. Then there is even more prominent example is World War One, when Russia joined the war in 1914, and there was huge support, popular support of that war, and like was it kind of how do they say patriotic spirit was very strong and so on. However, as the war was going on, that support quickly waned, and by end of 2016, Russia was on the edge of societal collapse, which started early in February of 1917 with their first revolution, and that eventually it led to execution of the emperor and his family. So as you can see, it sounds like the Russian society can easily go from total, almost like 100% support of the military action, to actually then turn onto its political top and destroy the political top. So there is a potential validity that this war, and especially the prolonged situation, may lead to internal blow up in Russia. So just another sort of I'm not advocating any point of view. I'm just sharing information here, right? So just kind of continuing this discussion so that more viewers are aware of the past historical precedents, because they probably inform us a little bit about the national character of the Russian population. So having said that, now we're gonna do a frontline walkthrough. And I just would like to mention one thing. It does seem to us that this Donbass salient is going to stay there, that Russian forces will not be able to encircle. They may still do some small progress in the north or in the south, and essentially it will all fizzle out. We're not seeing refitted units from Kyiv East or Kyiv West group. So which tells us that they're still, and we even hearing reports that, for example, 90th Division here somewhere in Kursk region next to Ukrainian border. So apparently these units are in situation where they're capable of defensive action, but they're not capable of offensive action for whatever reason. We don't have details. We don't, whether it's equipment or manpower, and we believe it's more about manpower at this point. So in our view, that they probably will not be ready for use anytime soon, because initially we expected that they will be available in about months or so after initial withdrawal from the northern and northeastern Ukraine. If you remember, that happened around March 27, 28, 29. So we saw that by now they should be totally refitted and committed, in full battle ready condition, committed again. But we don't see that. And that makes us saying that there's a shortage of either manpower or equipment or both that prevents that from happening. And what we're actually seeing here is we're seeing actually brigades that were never used before, and they're coming in sort of small quantities. So we saw initially like 21st Brigade coming here, 38, 39. Now we identify there's another one on the Izyum bridgehead, 23rd. So we're seeing that sounds like Russian forces trying to put something here to continue pressure, but there's not enough in terms of quantity to make decisive breakthrough here. In addition, what we getting more firmer believe is that all of these units here, 144th Division, 200th Brigade, and 2nd Special Forces Brigade, they are no longer there. They are apparently on the Russian side here in Belgorod region of Russia. And what is there is just simply third-rated screening troops to create impression on Ukrainian side that that Russian forces are still there. And this is kind of tells us that, okay, the idea of capturing Kharkiv is totally abandoned by Russian side. And the same as what's happening here on Kherson bridgehead. There is no new attempts to attack Ukrainian side, and really Russia is here on the strategic defensive, trying to simply protect this channel with fresh water to Crimea. So this is basically like kind of like last hurrah for Russian troops here, which will not end in anything. So unless there is mass mobilization and all of the conscripts are flooding and coming, this is kind of the end for this situation for the Russian forces. Maybe they will still be able to capture Azovstal and destroy Ukrainian defenders there. That probably will be the last victory that they will be able to show here. Beyond that, it does look to us that the Russian forces are totally exhausted, and the things may start changing in opposite direction. Not like Ukraine is able to really quickly and strongly counterattack, but it's going to be a tactic that works for Ukrainian side, which is killing by 1,000 deaths, and that's really what's happening in Ukraine. That's what Ukrainian army was capable of delivering. And we discussed before, both commanders on Russian and Ukrainian side are totally mediocre and even below mediocre, and we don't expect that they will sort of somehow become Napoleons and somehow will change and will get better. So this is kind of like a given, right? So sort of like call it pigs don't fly, right? So that's kind of the situation. And Russia will not discover new Napoleons, and Ukraine will not discover new Napoleons. So, but their sort of advantage and the positive side for Ukraine right now is there is flow of new and more potent Western military equipment. So, for example, we learned that 81st Brigade got those 155 millimeter howitzers from the US, M777, and started using here, attacking Russian troops, actually attacking 23rd Brigade that attempted to attack here. So the attack was stalled and then basically repelled with the help of those howitzers. Let's now look at the situation around Kharkiv. That's our typical place where we start in a clockwise fashion. So as you remember, we mentioned that Ukrainian troops pushed Russian screening troops. So at this point, we don't believe that all of this, this 144th Division is here, the 59th Tank Regiment, which was attached to 144th Division and 200th Brigade, and even second Special Forces Brigade. We don't think they are here. So essentially, and the reason why Ukrainian attack on Kazachia Lopan failed is so the way we think is what's happening is this Russian units were pulled back, and they are on the Russian side of on the Russian side here, and so which means also that artillery is working and sort of supporting Russian troops. So since Kazachia Lopan is basically on the border, so then the screening troops could get strong artillery support from the Russian side, from the regular Russian troops. So for that reason, this attack was repelled. However, here it's much further. You cannot get artillery support in this area as much, especially if all of the troops were pulled back there. So for that reason, Ukrainian side was able successfully to squeeze out the screening troops out of this town of Staryi Saltiv. And just as a note here, this is also artificial lake here that's created for hydropower generation purposes, and the bridge across this Siverskiy Donetsk, actually here, was blown by the retreating Russian troops. So Ukrainian side cannot easily get on the other side and, let's say, do counter, some kind of offensive to cut off Russian troops on the Izyum bridgehead, which would be actually kind of very interesting military operation, but it's not going to happen for many reasons we discussed before. In addition, would like to point your attention is that any Ukrainian units that are more than 100 in their number, that means it's militia unit. So 127 is Ukrainian militia brigade, 113 is Ukrainian militia brigade. This 17th battalion is actually also a militia unit. So this all units are from the Kharkiv region. Kharkiv itself is a city, and then the Kharkiv region. So so the only regular Ukrainian army units here are 92nd Brigade, which is tasked with defending city of Kharkiv, and then 93rd Brigade. But most of the brigade, we believe, was pulled down to protect Izyum bridgehead. So as of today, there's no any new movements here. So the situation is stable and the same. And we believe as Ukrainian troops will be approaching Russian border where there is artillery, Russian regular army artillery, they will be facing difficult task and probably will be repelled by the artillery fire, similar to what happened in Zaporizhzhia open several days ago. Now let's keep going. We're gonna move further down south and look at the Izyum bridgehead and also Lyman bridgehead, which is controlled by Ukrainian army. So again, here there's no differences, same situation. There's no progress on Russian side. As we discussed, we identified 23rd Russian brigade here. They are attacking along this road toward Barvinkove. The attack was basically repelled by the 81st Brigade, by the artillery of the 81st Brigade, which used M777 US howitzers to basically destroy the column of Russian troops on this road. So now let's look at the situation on the Lyman bridgehead, which is here, as you can see, and which is where Ukrainian troops are losing the control of it slowly but surely. So let's start and look here. First of all, Russian side is controlling this juncture. As you can see here, this is a village called Alexandrivka. Unfortunately, due to the scale of map, it's not shown here, but that's the village here. So the fighting is happening. What is sort of good sort of point for Ukrainian side is this fighting is going on in this forest, and this all forests here, this greenery, it's all forest. It's mostly pine forests here, and this is generally kind of resort area for Donetsk and Kharkiv region, just as a general side note for all of this. So it's a supportive, it's good defensive area in terms of that they have forests, it's not open area, and it's concealing, and it's helpful, right? So we can see a lot of fighting right now in this forest around here. Russian troops did not make any progress today. They made some progress a few days ago, but the front line stays stable. So they're still trying to capture this village of Drobyshevo here, and even looks like still this village of Stavki, which is kind of like in a way salient or like peninsular, still controlled by Ukrainian side. However, where there's the dangerous situation is actually here in the southern part, where Russian troops captured village of Dibrova and Ozerne, and that creates opportunity to attack towards this village of Staryi Caravan and essentially cut off Ukrainian troops that are here in this area from being able to being supplied, and then when needed being able to retreat to the western side of the Siverskiy Donetsk river. So that's dangerous situation. We'll see how these things develop, because this bridgehead has no strategic value for Ukrainian side. The only strategic value is that it helps with delaying Russian troops in expectation that more Western weapons are going to be arriving, and that will change the dynamic of this conflict into Ukrainian favor. So let's continue moving. Then we're going to look at the situation around town of Severodonetsk, Rubizhne, and Popasna. So this is kind of tip of this Donbass salient here. So Russian side is not putting any pressure on the perimeter of Severodonetsk. In the sort of strategic approach for the Russian side, they actually would like to capture Popasna, which is right, unfortunately, that was cut off, but it's kind of like right here, where the 57 brigade is attacking and Wagner mercenaries. And then kind of like attack and try to cut off this from the south, and all forced retreat of Ukrainian troops from there, and basically retreat towards west. So that's the idea, we believe, behind the Russian that Russian command has in mind. The only place where there is some kind of pressure is this town of Rubizhne, but this pressure is really done not by Russian troops, but the Second Army Corps, which, as we discussed, is consists of the Ukrainian collaborators who decided to join Russian forces. So for those, there is a Second Army Corps and the First Army Corps, which first one operates in south in the Donetsk region, and the second one operates more like this area, which is relatively north, and it's in Lugansk region. Based on information we have, it does seem that Russian troops here, and specifically Second Army Corps, managed to finally squeeze Ukrainian forces out of southern outskirts of Rubizhne, and the fighting is happening in the village of Voyevodivka, which is basically a village that's squished between the town of Rubizhne and Severodonetsk. So it's essentially right on the edge of Rubizhne. That's where it is. We're still waiting for confirmation of that, but that looks very extremely probable, sort of very very believable information. Let's put it this way. There is if we're gonna go down south, so Russian side is essentially controls captured village of Nizhny and trying to attack Toshkivka. They essentially control village of Orikhove, and then they will try to attack this key juncture here, as you can see. And they actually not putting much pressure against this village of Zolote. So now let's move a little bit towards south to look what's going on in Popasna, because that's the main axis of attack. So Severodonetsk is here, you see, that's where it is. And Popasna is here, and the idea is basically kind of break through here and kind of like move north and essentially either encircle those troops in Severodonetsk or force them to retreat to the west. We're not saying that that's going to happen, but that's the idea behind it. So again, very, very fierce fighting for Popasna, very heavy casualties on both sides, but there's no progress, essentially no progress for the Russian side. So the situation is status quo, and roughly Russian side controls between 50 to 60% of the town, and the remainder is controlled by Ukrainian side. So we look at sort of situation here. Now this front line is essentially stable and quiet in terms of there are no attacks. There is obviously artillery shelling here all the time, but there are no like regular infantry attacks or armored forces attacks. So we're going to look straight west of Donetsk, where situation is more or less stable, more or less the same. the same places for attacks is Avdiivka. We're also hearing that there was attack on the village of called New York, which is very kind of interesting that there is a village like that here in Ukraine. And then there is attack on Marinka, which is all typical places of attack, and then Novomikhailivka. So all typical places being attacked without much progress, and essentially it's a stalemate and slow grind of both sides here. So now we're going to look at the Zaporizhzhia front line here, which is another important sector of the front line. And as we discussed, this forms sort of southern pincer of the Russian attempt to encircle Ukrainian troops here, and the Izyum bridgehead forms the northern pincer here, right? So the idea is that they meet somewhere, let's say west of Pokrovsk, and encircle all of this huge mass of Ukrainian troops, which, as we discussed, we don't think is going to happen at this point. So, but let's look at the situation here in Zaporizhzhia, as this is this is the place where the Russian side is still actively trying to attack and trying to achieve something. So what we're learning is that looks like Russian troops managed to capture villages of Novosilka and Zelene Pole and move a little bit more towards north. So Ukrainian defenders here now in the villages of Temerivka and Vilne Pole as the key sort of defensive strongholds. And for that reason, because for that reason, Ukrainian command brought here fresh units, which is Azov Kiev regiment and probably a couple of battalions from 128th brigade. We don't know like number. We just know that there are units from this brigade here. Basically, this is kind of like a firefighting team here, trying to plug this potential hole that Russian troops slowly but surely were building here by inflicting heavy casualties on 109th and 110th Ukrainian militia brigades. And just as a side note, these militia brigades don't have as much equipment. They are not as well sort of trained and equipped as regular army units. They are very motivated, so there's no question about that. So that would sort of offsets lack of equipment. But nevertheless, against a lot of tanks, you cannot just put your motivation. So at this point, we believe this progress here is stalled, and very unlikely that Russian side will be able to do much more relative to what they got here. But there was a little bit sort of dangerous situation a few days ago here. So now let's, beyond that, just regular attacks on Gulyaipole, which is another large stronghold without much of a success here. So then another stronghold is Oryhiv, again, attacks there without much success. So otherwise, this western section from Gulyaipole to Kamensk is more stable. That's more secure situation for Ukrainian side than this eastern part between Velika Novosilka and Gulyaipole. That was the dangerous situation. For now, we believe it's kind of plugged with this firefighting units here. Now let's keep going. We're gonna look at the Kherson bridgehead. Again, we just want to reiterate the same idea, is that for Russian side, this is strategic defense here. All they want to protect this channel with the fresh water to Crimea. That's all it is at this point. That initially they had big plans for it because it's a jumping pad for attacking Kryvyi Rih. Then, immediate goal was Mykolaiv and then Odessa and creating land bridge with Transnistria. And then there is also nuclear power station around this area. So there was another goal to capture, basically capture there. So, and then obviously, if they're successful here, that allows them then to attack from the rear Dnipro and essentially kind of create even bigger disaster here in Donbass salient. So potentially was very dangerous penetration into Ukrainian defenses, but at this point it's all dead, and then now Russian side is just defending what their initial gains that they had in Kherson region. So let's look what's going on here. It's essentially the same. Russian side basically controls everything, majority, well, almost everything of Kherson region, and a little bit have kind of like bridgehead here around Snihorivka for eventual, if they decide to attack again, if they get fresh forces, which we don't believe it's going to happen, but just for the future they keep this bridgehead a little bit here, and then they just kind of have defensive positions here, which is essentially probably screening troops here from special forces brigade, as the front line here is huge. It's probably like 150 160 kilometers, so you can imagine it's just essentially strongholds, but the land here, the terrain here is very sort of supportive for defenders who are covered from the air, in terms of air and artillery support, because it's all very flat here, super flat. You can see for like 20-30 kilometers easily. There's almost no greenery here, no trees, only like one file like line of trees for like 5 kilometers from each other. So essentially it's super it's excellent terrain for attacks if you have, especially as we discussed, artillery and air support, which Russian side did have that, but now it's, as we discussed before, Russian air support is also kind of on defensive, because Ukrainian troops are saturated with anti-air man-held rockets, and so that creates a lot of danger for them. They lost quite a bit of equipment already, so they are much more cautious about how they attacking Ukrainian side at this point. Okay, that's it for today, and until tomorrow, thanks again for watching and supporting us. Bye bye.